of the points can be used to find this length. Okay, so you can use these coordinates on a coordinate grid or on a number line to find the distance between the two. Now this next question here, is segment QP the same as segment PQ? Right here. Segment QP, is that the same as segment PQ? Yes. Okay, so with segments, you can interchange those letters. So it doesn't matter that order. So when they want you to find the distance of segment QP, it doesn't matter which order you put those points in. So you could do PQ or QP. Congruent segments are segments with the same measure. Okay, so you're going to have that same distance or same length. So looking at our distance formulas here, we have on a number line or in a coordinate plane. So first on a number line, it is the absolute value of the difference between their coordinates. Difference meaning subtraction. So to find the distance of PQ, we're taking the absolute value. Okay, so I'm going to put in my absolute value signs here. And we're taking the difference of their coordinates. So P is at x sub 1 and Q is at x sub 2. So I have the absolute value of x sub 1 minus x sub 2. Or the order doesn't matter for a number line. You could also have the absolute value of x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Okay, you're going to get the same answer. Now we do want it to be absolute value because your distance is always positive. Okay, you're traveling somewhere, it's going to be positive. Even if you're going in reverse, you're still traveling. That's still a distance. It's going to always be positive. You should not get a negative. So looking at a coordinate plane. So if P has coordinates x sub 1 and y sub 1, and Q has coordinates x sub 2 and y sub 2, then we can use this formula right here to find the distance between those 2 points. So that is the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. Okay? Now the order of the x and y coordinates is very important. Okay? So you need to make sure that you're labeling your coordinates as we go through it and plugging them into that right piece. Okay? If you mess it up, you may end up getting a negative somehow. Okay, you don't want negatives. No, you won't get a negative anyways. But you do want it to be precise and in the exact order. Okay? This one doesn't matter. This one does. So looking further down here for some practice problems. So first I want to practice on a number line. This one usually flies by. It's pretty quick. We want to find the distance between points B and E. So point B is here, point E is here. Okay, so we're going to use that distance formula for a number line up here. So we'll take the absolute value, point B is at negative 6, minus point E is at 2, and our absolute value there. So simplifying, we have negative 6 minus 2. Okay, we'll get negative 8. And I want to take the absolute value of that to make sure it is positive. Okay, so the distance between those 2 points would be 8. Okay, looking at number 2, same thing. We have AC this time. So point A is at negative 7. Subtract point C is at negative 4. Okay, and I am going to put parentheses around that negative 4 just to enforce that it is negative. So I have negative 7 minus a negative 4. I get negative 3. The absolute value of negative 3 is 3. Questions? Do numbers 3 and 4 for me if you haven't already. All right, so these ones go a little bit faster. So if you're not done, that's okay. I'm just going to start going through the answers here. So for CF, you should have gotten 9. Okay, the distance between those two is 9. And for FB, the distance between those 2 points should be 11. Now, a good way to check is just kind of count between the 2 points. Okay? So if you need to count like in AC, from A to C, I count 1, 2, 3. Oh, distance is 3. Okay, so number lines, a little bit easier. You can just count between the 2 points. Questions? All right, so moving on to distance using coordinates. So I'm going to write the formula up here at the top, just so we don't have to flip back and forth to see it. So our distance is equal to the square root, the quantity x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared, plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. Okay, that way we can refer back to that on the top of our page instead of flipping it over. So example number 5 here. We want to find the distance between points C and D, given the coordinate C is at -4, -6, and D is at 5, -1. So my first step when I solve a distance problem is to label my coordinates. So C is the first coordinate I have here, so I'm just going to label it x sub 1 and y sub 1. Okay, it is not x sub 1 and x sub 2. There is an x and y value in that coordinate. That's why it's x sub 1 and y sub 1. Okay, it is an x and y coordinate. That means point D I can label as x sub 2 and y sub 2. Okay, so now that I've labeled my coordinates, all I really have to do is plug those numbers into my distance formula. Okay, so I have my distance is equal to the square root. We're taking x sub 2, which is 5. Okay, so I have 5 minus x sub 1. Looking back here, I labeled x sub 1 as -4. Okay, that whole quantity is squared. Then adding on, y sub 2, I labeled as -1, minus y sub 1 was -6, and that quantity is squared. Okay, and I'm going to extend my square root symbol so it covers everything. Everybody with me so far? All right, so from here I want to simplify. Okay, so I still have my square root symbol. That doesn't go away. I have 5 minus -4. So that's like saying plus a positive, right? So I have 5 plus 4. That'll give me 9, and that's still squared. Then plus, I have -1 minus a -6. Okay, again, plus a positive. So that will give me 5 squared. Do not just take the square root of both of those and say it's just 9 plus 5. It's not. Okay? You actually have to square both of these numbers. So 9 squared is 81. Plus 5 squared is 25. From here, I need to add together both of those numbers. Okay, I end up getting the square root of 106. Okay, from here, I can just use my calculator and get a decimal. So, on your calculator, I know it's a little hard to see with the glare and everything, but if you have a calculator kind of like this, to get that square root symbol, you need to press second, and then that x to the power of 2 button. Okay? That square root symbol is right above it. Okay, so I'm going to press, and you can see it pop up. And then I'll type in 106, and then my parenthesis. Press equals, and I got about 10.3. Okay, so the distance between point C and D is about 10.3 units. Okay, if you're having issues with your calculator and you're not getting that answer, after I'm done with problem 6, I can come around and help you out if you're still a little lost. Okay? But questions on 5 before we go through 6? All right, so number 6, we're going to do the same thing. We're using this distance formula here, finding that distance between points E and F. So again, first step I'm going to do is label my coordinates. So point E is just the first that shows up, so I'm going to label it as x sub 1 and y sub 1. Point F, then I'll label as x sub 2 and y sub 2. And then I can use my distance formula and plug in those numbers. So our distance is equal to that square root of x sub 2 is 8 minus x sub 1 is negative 5. That quantity is squared. Plus y sub 2 is negative 4 minus y sub 1 is 6. That quantity is squared. And again, from here I want to simplify. So I have the square root. 8 minus negative 5 is positive 13 squared. Plus negative 4 minus 6 will give me negative 10 squared. Again, I need to actually square both of those numbers, so I have 13 squared is 169. Plus, if I square a negative number, what happens? It's positive. So negative 10 squared is still positive 100. Okay, I can add both of those together to get 269. Again, I can plug that into my calculator. So second square root 269. And you should get about 16.4 units as your distance between those 2 points. Make sure you can get 16.4 on your calculator plugging that in. Questions? All right, try number 7 for me. Do the same thing we were just doing. Find the distance between points J and K using that formula up at the top of your paper or on the front.
This is basically like child's play in Mathematics 4. I learned this all last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, math antics.
Anybody need help with their calculator and they're not getting the right answer? All right, I do have number 7 up on the board. You should have gotten the distance to be about 12.2. I didn't show all of my work there. I just didn't label out my points at the very beginning, which you should still do. Still labeling your points. Any questions on number 7? So the last type of problem where you see kind of this distance happening is if you're given a graph with points on it. Okay, so we still want to find that distance between points M and Z. Now, there's just one extra step. Okay, you actually have to find the coordinates of those points. So, from the origin, to get to point M here, I go left 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so left 4, and then down 1. So point M is at -4, -1. Point Z, I go right 3 and up 3. So point Z is at 3, 3. Now I can use those two coordinates to find the distance using my distance formula. Now it doesn't matter which one you label as x sub 1 and y sub 1 and x sub 2 and y sub 2. You'll get the same answer as long as you plug it into the formula correctly. So I'm just going to label point M here, x sub 1 and y sub 1, and Z, x sub 2, y sub 2. Again, if you flip-flopped them, you should still get the same answer. So finding that distance, take the square root of x sub 2 is 3, minus x sub 1 is -4. That quantity is squared. Plus y sub 2 is 3, minus y sub 1. That quantity is squared. Okay, again, simplifying. So we have the square root of 7 squared here, plus 4 squared. So I'll end up with the square root of 49 plus 16, which is equal to the square root of 65. Okay, and in decimal form, that is about either 8.06 or 8.1 is fine as well. Okay, so that's your distance in units between those 2 points. When you're given a graph like this, you cannot just count the dashes between as you go up the line. It doesn't work that way. Okay? Questions on 8? I think we're doing pretty good. All right, then on to number 9. I do want you guys to do this problem in your groups. It is what we did on Friday. Okay? So label your segment, set up that problem, solve for x, and find BC. Okay, so B is between A and C. Label that segment, find x and BC.
So this is what we probably did on Friday.
I'm going.
Wonderful.
2x plus 3 plus x equals 4x. Whole thing.
Sure. I need to go down to what time should we stop?
Okay. Put the tissue on it, please.
I finished this one. There's just more.
Okay. Once you are finished with number 9, I'm still going to go over the answer, but if you are finished and you're waiting, your assignment again is in the book. It's on the very bottom of our note sheet. I don't know if a lot of you noticed that on Friday. The assignment's actually on the bottom. It's page 31, and it'll be numbers 13 through 31. They don't take that long, so you should be able to get at least through half of it in class. If you're still unable to get into the book, call me over and I will help you get into the book because you might be going to the wrong site.
Do that for.
No. No wonder it's only 6 hours. Oh, I know. I can figure it out.
All right, just kind of going through this one quickly. So they told us B was between A and C. So I placed my point B between A and C. Now that doesn't necessarily mean B is a midpoint of AC. Okay, so that does not mean AB and BC are the same length. Okay, don't assume that they are. Now I can go through and label what they gave me. So AC is 4x minus 12. So this entire length here is 4x minus 12. I'm given AB is just x, so I'll label that as x. And BC is 2x plus 3. So I'll label BC as 2x plus 3. Now what I can do, since I'm given each piece of that segment, I can add together the two smaller ones. So AB plus BC. If I add together those two smaller ones, I'll end up with the entire segment of AC. So now I was given all of these equations. I can just plug those in to this one I created here. So AB is x plus BC was 2x plus 3. And AC was 4x minus 12. From here, I just need to solve for x. So I have 3x plus 3 equals 4x minus 12. I'll subtract 3x. I'm running out of ink here. Which will give me 3 equals x minus 12. Add 12. X will be equal to 15. Okay, so once x is equal to 15, I can go back and find BC. So I'll plug 15 in for x, and you should have gotten BC is equal to 33. I don't think I have any ink in my pen. Questions on that one? That was what we did Friday. Try and get logged into the book. Again, if you can't, please raise your hand so I can come over and help you. Otherwise, I am going to put it up on the screen here so you can look up to the screen if you're still having issues and go through those problems. But everybody should try and at least log into the book and make sure the book actually appears for them. And again, the assignment is on the bottom of your note sheet, but it's on page 31 and it's 13 through 31. Okay, give me 1 second. All right.
together, or do you need the dashes?
You shouldn't need the dashes.
This one.
Yep.
Is there any way I can take this broken piece out of this chair?
No. I will help you in a second. Dang it. Okay. Where's... Cool. Okay. Oh, well, forgot that didn't work. You want to make sure you're going to and I can make sure that you're on the right one before you try this. The note sheets are all filled out. I just copied them. So they're fully filled out. And it should just be the last one that's in there. And the assignment's in the book. It's on the bottom of that note sheet. Yep, you can just take them.
respond with, oh. Yeah. Oh. This is simple. Kind of like, yes.
There you go. And then get flashlight. Everybody else done? Did you look okay?
There you go.
What is it?
If you didn't finish and it's due tomorrow, have a great night. I have to go to a staff meeting.
I see.
Would the following students please report to the office?
But you better do your
Olivia,
assignment.
Devin Anderson, Ricardo Puente, Lizzie Greenwald, and Jasmine Ocampo. Thank you.
But if you want to stay out in the commons, and then once you see all the teachers leave, if you want to stop by in here and check if you want.
Yeah, I'll follow.
What's up?
I was here for the textbook thing. You told me to stop after 7th hour.
There you go.
You never